What's going on, everybody? This is Moose and Brian here from OccupyFantasy.com at OccupyFantasy on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. I'm your host, Moose, at CFB_Moose on Twitter is where you can find me. I'm alongside with Brian, co-founder and CEO of Occupy Fantasy, at Brian Jester FF on Twitter. How's it going, Brian?
What's up, Moose? Week 4. You know how it goes. The model's kicked into full gear by now. We got underperforming wide receivers. And I got to say, this is probably, we get a couple of these weeks a year, but it's early this year. I think we got the first micro dosing or even macro dosing week of the year.
I know. I had a whole skit planned out if you didn't mention underperforming wide receivers. So,
dude, my bad. I didn't know. I guess we should have talked over the show before we got on.
We should have. I know. I was going to say I have a candle, and it's the greatest scent I ever smelled because the scent is underperforming wide receivers. But because it actually is a good smelling candle.
All right, we'll use it next week for the people who don't watch.
Exactly. Welcome to week 4. For those who don't know, that is when we start publishing our underperforming wide receivers. We have 3 weeks of data, basically kick all of last year's waiting out all this year. I'm excited, Brian. We were just talking before. It seems like almost from a GPP high entry or high risk stakes, it seems like a great slate. I mean, I stumbling over my words and how good it is.
Yeah, it's so bad it's good. I think that's the best way to describe it because you look for different angles and it's kind of gross. And I think for tournaments, it's really, really, really nice. And just to hit on a couple of the things you talked about here. And again, if you guys have questions throughout the show, we're here till 3 o'clock. Go ahead and throw them in the chat. But what makes week 4 start to improve our process so much more is the fact that we've talked about it on this show before, that for the first couple of weeks of the season, average draft position is more predictive of future performance than the current year to date stats are. Once it hits around week 4, that's when current year stats start to take over. That's when models start to get a lot better, like ours. And that's when we can introduce our underperforming wide receivers, which I'll explain because someone in our Discord asked about it. And I guess it's not intuitive if you've never signed up for Occupy Fantasy before, or you've never heard us, you don't know what underperforming wide receivers are. But essentially, and Moose, you can fill in any gaps I missed. Basically, we look at expected opportunity for all players, right? And receivers, especially, when they get targets, whether it's down the field, whether it's a lot of targets, whether it's in the red zone, but their fantasy points don't exactly match the opportunity that they've received, we deem them underperforming. And once they reach a certain threshold, they become an underperforming wide receiver. And generally, those guys have explosive games at some point in the very near future.
Yes, exactly. And it's a rolling 3 weeks. I like to point it out in this way, in the sense for a running back. Let's say if he breaks into the outside and gets shoestring tackle, 20 carries, shoestring tackle. You're like, all right, well, one of these times he's going to break it. Like, his shoestrings aren't that long. Same thing with wide receivers. They get a couple deep balls, some good targets, good route percentage, whole bunch of different combinations. A lot more complicated than that. But for a general lack of terms, that's kind of what we look for. And we put that in our model. And you can kind of see that, Brian, where when the underperforming actually went in the model, if you pull up the wide receivers, if you're an Occupy Fantasy member, you can sort by DraftKings or FanDuel OF index change, and you'll see there's these big boosts. Yep. That's the underperforming boost. So I'll give you an example. One of the underperforming wide receivers is DJ Chark, and he has an OF index of 46. Without the OF index, he'd be like 25 or so. At a 5K, when he gets that touchdown, because he's expected to overperform this week as compared to what he's done the last 3 weeks, at 5K, that gets you there.
And he's one. So there's 2 situations that boosted even further, right? We talk about the Julio Jones that was like the ultimate. He was an underperformer in that WFFC event. Underperforming wide receiver coming into the game. They were missing one of their other playmakers. I think it was Calvin Ridley was out. Whoever wasn't playing, and the opposing team was missing DBs, right? So if you get some situational factors included in, now it's just rocket to the moon, right? And Amon-Ra St. Brown is actually out this week, so now it's just DJ Chark and Josh Reynolds on the outside there for Detroit. So his targets in theory should be boosted even more, and that just that enhances his UPWR status.
Yeah, it's nice when you don't have Jerry Rice, Amon-Ra St. Brown, but
taking away targets. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So we got some questions here in the chat. First one from David says, underperforming wide receiver week. Is this the week 2 expensive running backs break the slate?
So this is interesting because the last couple of weeks, Moose, we talked about these mid-range running backs, but a lot of the underperformers this week, a lot of the mispriced receivers are in that mid-range as they have been the last couple of weeks, and there aren't really that many guys to pay up for, right? It's not a couple on the slate, and in actuality, Jonathan Taylor, Derrick Henry, some of these other guys are in really good matchups, really good game environments, and all these all these mid-tier running backs who were kind of underpriced in the last couple of weeks, they either had role changes and randomly didn't get enough carries last week or touches, or they're priced up even more. So we don't have as many mispriced running backs in the lower range outside of Jamal Williams, outside of Khalil Herbert, these newer starters. So yeah, I think there's a good chance that JT or Henry or both could break the slate. And it's not like we got them at 20% plus ownership like we probably would have a couple of years ago.
Exactly. Yeah. T Nasty Bets, Rick, what's up, everyone? Saying hello, thank you for what we do. Ed says, "What's up, Trubisky? 3x1 according to the underperforming wide receiver." Brian, do you think we have to go that risky here?
When we get to the stacks, let's talk about it. So hold tight there. Okay. Let's hold tight there. We'll get to the stacks, and believe me, we got some thoughts on that.
Yeah. MH says, "Hey guys, Tanya and Conklin or Everett at tight end for a week 4 start. If you can specify what contest type and site, we'll get back to you on that." And kind of back to the running backs, as Bet says, basically it's Henry going nuts with Buckner and Leonard out.
Yeah, so I think Shaquille Leonard's actually going to be back. This is the first time he's been on the injury report, but not been ruled out on Friday. And just reading between the lines, a lot of reporters expect him to make it go. Whether he's 100% or not, I'm not sure, but they were holding out pretty long for him, so I think he'll be okay. The biggest one, obviously, is DeForest Buckner. Didn't practice all week. Obviously, a great defensive lineman that would certainly help Derrick Henry's chances. So yeah, again, any injury impact that we're looking to boost these players, for sure, we'll take that. And to answer MH's question, assuming it's not DFS, it sounds like season long, I would just say Gerald Everett is the best option in that group for sure.
Okay. And Michael says, if you're building one lineup, Herbert or Murray. Brian, I know we've been burned by Kyler Murray for like 47 straight weeks, so I'm wanting to say Herbert here. What do you think?
Yeah, what's 48 straight weeks? No, actually, I'm not even on that game this week, which is probably the week that it goes off. But I think a lot of factors point towards Justin Herbert being the better DFS play this week, especially with the stacks that you can play with him.
Exactly. Yep. All right, cool. So let's go back. So speaking of stacks, let's go to that. There are 2 stacks that we talked about in the Occupy Fantasy Daily plug, which you can check out at occupyfantasy.com. Should be in the description. Not, we'll make sure it's in the description. First stack that's written in there, Buffalo at Baltimore. And Brian, I want to get your take on this one.
Yeah, this is interesting. So if you just look at any projection system, any raw points, this game's going to pop, right? It has one of the highest totals. And we have to recommend, especially for smaller contests, if you're playing small field GPPs, I certainly think you can get away with this. However, large field, I think just there are a couple warts for me. And if anyone plays it, I am not opposed to it. We recommended it, obviously, right? It's a great stack. I don't know if I'm personally playing it just for a couple of reasons. One, if we look at just like situational stuff, Baltimore has completely overperformed in these explosive play metrics. I mean, just look at the Miami game, the New England game, like basically every game this year, their expected explosive plays are just through the roof. And obviously Lamar's playing out of his mind, and he could very well continue to do that. Buffalo does get 4 starters back this week on defense. We targeted them last week, and Miami was successful, but they only ran like 36 plays or something. But now they get most of their guys back outside of Micah Hyde, Tre'Davious White. So that's gonna help. Buffalo only rushes 4 guys. They get pressure with 4 guys. A lot of Lamar's damage this year has been done against more than 4 rushers. So I think from a matchup perspective, it's a lot tougher for Baltimore side. Gabe Davis still banged up, re-injured his ankle. He's gonna play, but he hasn't been effective. So who else do you stack? Are you just 2-1 stacking this game? I could see it. But the other issue here, Moose, and this is kind of an overlying issue over all the East Coast games, is the weather. The total's down a point, so it's not completely alarming yet. And it doesn't look like it's going to be like super bad weather, but it's 15 miles per hour wind, maybe some light rain. Nothing crazy, but if we're looking for reasons to fade an incredibly expensive game stack, it certainly helps.
You pretty much hit all the points there. And, the weather scares me. As we were talking about, Brian, when totals to the weather start to when there's a weather situation and the total starts to drop days before, that's usually when it's the sharp money, because people don't actually check the weather. They just look on NFL game day Sunday morning. oh shit, it's raining. I need to bet the under now, and then it goes 2-3 points.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty much why I'm off that here.
I
Let's
mean,
see.
real quick, most the other game that's definitely going to be impacted, and the total has already reflected that, is the Philly and Jacksonville game. If that game was in a dome or in regular weather, we'd be all over that as a stack. But it opened at 49. It's down to 45.5 at some places. Wind gust up to 30 miles per hour, maybe some rain. The weather is going to impact that, and the betting markets have reflected that. And it's going to be the biggest impacted game, at least from what we're seeing here Saturday early afternoon.
Definitely. Really quick, Bryant says, what's your best 4-leg parlay plus 400? I'm actually going to do one better, a 1-leg parlay, aka a single bet, back to underperforming wide receivers. Brian, I saw this right before the stream. You can actually get Devontae Parker to score a touchdown. Let me just actually make sure I have this right. Yeah, anytime touchdown score, Devontae Parker over at FanDuel plus 410.
So there you go. You don't even have to rely on 4 outcomes. You rely on 1 outcome that has historically over-exceeded expectations. Yeah, most let's make that bet after the show.
Exactly, yeah. Okay, so MH actually says classic DK cash, 10 to 100 man small field, 50-50 double ups, and also in the season.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah, I still think Everett's the safest of that group, right? Conklin obviously has done a lot, but there's a whole lot of issues, and unfortunately we'll talk about this game. But the Jets, with a quarterback change, a lot of the trends are out the like tight ends have gotten this much, running backs have gotten the trends are out the window with Zach Wilson starting now. So obviously Conklin has dominated opportunity at tight end there, but that could not be the case this week. So I think Everett's the safest without Keenan Allen.
Yep, makes sense to me. Let's go into the second game stack that's written in the plug, and that's the Raiders and the Broncos. Brian, I'm curious to get your opinion on this game stack.
I mean, this popped for you too, pop for me, pop for Chris. So it hits the trifecta of people whose input we value, right, on game stacks.
Yeah.
And, just initially it's like, how is a Denver offense popping in any game stack? But you look at the matchup here, you look at concentrated target volume with Cortland Sutton, with Jerry Jeudy. A lot of the salaries line up here. So yeah, I'm a big fan of it, right? And I think people see the 10-point game from Russell Wilson last week, or 11 points, whatever, enough to cover the pick'em rate, however many points they scored. So
yeah.
It's a tough, again, if you just look at it, it's been tough, but they're going to bust out eventually. And this game looks like the right game to do it, and the model is all over it. So yeah, this will be one of the games I stack for sure.
Yeah, you hit it all in the head as well. We get some lower owned cheap guys. And I didn't pay .bets to say this, to continue on a game stack that's not necessarily in the plug, but it popped for both of us, is Nick Chubb continuously under owned. Do you have any love for him or the Browns this week?
I think you have to, right? Like, again, we talk about guys that can lead the slate in scoring at 5% ownership. This goes back to the preview $1 million mission before the season started. Play those guys, right? That's how you get ahead in GPPs. And Nick Chubb is one of the best running backs. He's one of those guys that you look at the expected fantasy points. He's overperforming, but he's one of the best running backs in the league, so he should overperform, right? So, however, I think I have a feeling Chris is going to add this to the plug at some point today. But Cleveland Atlanta is really popping. It's got a decently high total and concentrated target trees on both sides, right? You can play Drake London, you can play underperforming tight end, by the way, which you rarely see, Kyle Pitts. And then Amari Cooper and David Njoku dominate on the other side. And I know you're thinking, I mean, shit, can I play Mariota? Sure, I think he'll actually be decently popular. And then you're really thinking, can I play Jacoby Brissett? And I think outside the largest tournaments, probably no. But here's the Jacoby Brissett build a lineup challenge. After the stream's over, or as you're watching this, build a lineup with the Jacoby Brissett, Amari Cooper, David Njoku running back with Drake London. And just see what the rest of your lineup can do. And if Jacoby Brissett throws for 2 touchdowns, 250 yards, we've seen GPP wins with cheap quarterbacks who don't, just score 30, 40 points. That's how that can. I think that type of build has a really good chance of winning this week. Whether that's Jacoby Brissett, whether that's someone as Chad is talking about, Geno Smith, whether that's Goff, whoever you think, right? I think the cheap quarterback double stacks this week are a really viable path. And I'm telling you, go build a lineup. You'll be shocked at how good it looks outside the quarterback.
Pretty much, yeah. And there's one thing that really popped off from me and on that Cleveland side is, Brian, we talked about it week after week after week. Clean pockets are so important for a quarterback. If they have time to step back, throw, no pressure, they have they have better chances throwing accurate passes. Atlanta's pressure percentage on snaps in our model. 15%, the lowest
Ew.
by a lot. So we're expecting Brissett to sit back and not get much pressure, make some clean throws. And again, also with that low of a pressure percentage, it allows the routes to go for a little bit farther. So maybe instead of a 4-yard slant, it's a 12-yard slant.
Yeah,
So,
dude.
yeah, I mean, I'm all over that game. The team total going down scares me a little bit, but with, as we say sometimes before, when every total is low, none of them are low. So,
Yeah, right. Exactly, right. We don't have really any many games over 50 points, so I'm okay with it. And yeah, if you're struggling to find stacks, like this week is pretty tough. Pressure percentage is a great one. That's why we include it in the model. And like you said, Moose, if you look at any quarterback stats, is very intuitive. Their numbers in a clean pocket versus being pressured, obviously it's way better in the clean pocket. And even to that point, it's easier to predict. It's stickier performance when you're in a clean pocket versus some guys just have rarely noisy stats when they're pressured, right? So clean pockets is easy to project, and when you project a lot of clean pockets, so you can easily project ceiling performances. The model's picking up on this game. Again, clear targets allows you to fit in a lot of stuff. You got at least one underperformer there in Kyle Pitts. So it sounds crazy, but not as crazy as some of these other stacks we might talk about.
yeah, I mean, as we talked about it before, when you could have I mean, do we want to go that far down? I mean, you can go like Pittsburgh Jets, and you do a 3-by-1 with 3 underperforming wide receivers.
I mean, let's go there, dude. Let's talk about it, right? So
Yeah.
again, this large field only, it's probably only DraftKings only because FanDuel, the pricing is enough to where you don't have to get this crazy. But here's the, similar to the Jacoby Brissett challenge, here's the Zach Wilson, Mitchell Trubisky build a lineup challenge. Go build a lineup, a 3-by-1 stack. You can get underperforming wide receivers in there. You can get, and even like Deontay Johnson's popular, right? But no one's going to play him in a game stack. So you automatically erase any of his popularity by playing him in that way. And you get the craziest amount of high ceiling plays around them. It's insane. And again, you have to really, really microdose to see the ceiling and the path to victory for this lineup. But underperformers and stacks generally is plus EV. Playing a cheaper quarterback this week looks like the way to go. And I don't even, you know what, it sounds crazy, but I don't even mind it in smaller contests because obviously we think Lamar and Josh Allen and Hurts are going to score 30 plus. But if the weather impacts them like they do, and no one really scores more than 25, 30 fantasy points, getting 14 to 15 out of your starting quarterback in DFS isn't that big of a downgrade when you can upgrade at every single other position.
Exactly, yeah. And as Ed talks about here, he says, I got a Trubisky 3-by-1 with just insane running backs and tight ends. Like, we've
Yeah,
talked
dude.
about it before, Brian, on
It's crazy.
Showdown with DraftKings, where the highest scoring player necessarily doesn't have to be the captain. If he's so expensive, he gets priced out. It'd be the very similar situation here, where you have such an expensive stack and they don't do that well. They do okay, do good, but another stack does okay or good as well, but the other one-offs do great. They're outscoring them, so that can get you there as well.
You figure, right? So there's two paths to victory. One, they do well, right? Like Trubisky just goes off, or Zach Wilson goes off, or Brissett goes off, right? And they score 20 plus DraftKings points. That's great, right? But also if they score 15 to 18, you just need the big guys not to score 40 like Lamar last week. Only reason Lamar and Andrews were in the winning lineup last week, obviously they did great, is because no one else on the slate did remotely anything. Right? No other quarterback was in contention. Lamar went off in week 2. He wasn't in winning lineups because Tua at a cheaper price scored pretty well. So this is something to think about this week. I know it's super gross to think about. And again, we can't even write that in the plug because half our members would leave if they read that and it didn't do anything. Or even if they just performed decently, right? They'd be like, I can't believe they. So like, we save this for the show. We save this for the live viewers, the dedicated folks who listen and are willing to galaxy brain some tournament lineups with us. Again, small field contest. Not sure you're doing it, but even. You know what, Most I'm looking at small field. Maybe I will try it this week. I'm just curious to see what you can build with it because it is pretty powerful.
I mean, I was making some lineups earlier. I mean, you have Elijah Vesuvius more, which if he pops off, there will be some great memes going on in Discord. But yeah, I mean, like you said, you can make some lineups that aren't like. Sometimes you build lineups, small field, high risk lineups, GPP lineups, and you're like, okay, this is really gross. But the lineups that you're making with this, you're like, okay, this doesn't feel that gross, and I actually feel somewhat confident. I've made probably hand-built probably 10, 15, 20 lineups with that same mindset of, okay, this essentially isn't bad, It's not gross at all. In fact, I kind of like it. Whereas if I was doing, a Trubisky 3x1, and I'm like, this is terrible. I don't even know how they get there. Then we're talking a whole different conversation.
Exactly. But I don't even, again, because you're pairing them with guys who are underpriced and expected
Yeah.
to perform well. And
Yep.
and as we talked about on Tuesday night, if scoring is down across the league, punting at quarterback is not the worst idea.
Yeah, exactly.
Because not like we have like 8-10 guys scoring 30 points. So
completely reasonable. All right, so we got some questions in here. Let's see. Michael says you can only pick one, Waller or Adams. I'm assuming Devontae Adams. Is that the meme?
I'll go Waller. He ranks a little
Perfect.
higher in tight end stuff for us.
Okay. Excuse me. And MH also has another question. He's sitting Gabe Davis and Eckler, and starting Jamal Williams and Khalil Herbert. Is that a good decision for him?
No, that's good. I know it seems crazy to draft Eckler in the first round and bench him, but usage is in there, and usage is going to be there for Jamal and Khalil this week. So yeah, I like it.
Definitely. Jose says, it is my belief that the Jaguars defense is legit. What do you guys think about against the Eagles offense? Is it wise to take a chance on Jags defense?
Yes, I think it's a lot of people's belief, right? After shutting out the Colts at home, after completely shutting down the Chargers, who were injured, but shut them down, they look good, and now they're in a weather game with the totals dropping. So yeah, I think it's totally fine. And again, this is a different beast. The Eagles' offense has been insanely efficient, but it'll be a good battle, I think. So I don't think it's tournaments. I don't think it's a bad idea to take a risk on that.
Yeah, they're one of the more lower-owned defenses.
Right.
Yeah, and again, we've talked about it before. If there's a reason why you like them, that could be enough reason for you to play them. Let's see here. And then he also has another question. 4,500 in the flex spot. All right, basically favorite flex player under 4,500.
Yeah, what site, Jose, and what contest type? Because that impacts a lot of things. So if you just tell us the site, what contest you're playing, can certainly answer that question.
Ed says the biggest problem with the percent game stack is Chubb doesn't correlate. If Chubb is less than 5%, shouldn't he be prioritized?
Yeah, I think so, right? It's again, but there's a lot of good. We just said Chubb has overperformed a bit, right? So maybe he doesn't get there, but yeah, he doesn't, and that's important to realize. If you just have one lineup, yeah, maybe you prioritize Chubb and not play fucking Jacoby Brissett. I'm not going to fault anyone for making that decision ever, right? You play Mariota, you play Pitts, you play Lundy running back with Chubb. That's probably a really good lineup. So I don't mind that at all. If you're mass multi-entering, you're making multiple lineups, play a Brissett lineup without Chubb, right? I'm not saying go all in on Brissett or anything. So yeah, I think you're on the right track there, Ed.
Cool. Makes sense to me. So we talked about a handful of stacks, Brian. Is there any other ones that's not necessarily even a game stack, but maybe a side that's really stuck out for you that we've missed?
Yeah, the Chargers pop for me a bit. I think they pop for you as well, right? Against Houston, I don't think we can stack, or we have to stack Davis Mills that much, but we get Brandon Cooks, underperforming wide receiver that we can bring back. We got concentrated target trees, like we talk about it, with Keenan Allen out. So we got Mike Williams, Josh Palmer, Gerald Everett, who we talked about a little bit earlier. That makes a ton of sense to me if you're looking for like an actual good offense and not some shitty team. So that makes sense. And Tennessee's popping a bit for me too. Tennessee and Indy, that game is. I imagine most of the production ends up going through the running backs, but if it does end up in the passing game, it's kind of gross, but I could see it. But that's on the lower list. Those other ones we talked about most are ahead of for me. Do you have any that we haven't talked about, or do you have any opinions on those?
Not really. My rank has changed a little bit. Not really much stands out for me. I don't even know. Not really much pops out. It's the 3-4 teams three game stacks that we've talked about rank kind of high. Indy, kind of Indy maybe, but not really too much going on
Okay.
there. Let's see here. Sean says, "Will I get banned from chat for spamming Brian Hoyer's season? You do it twice, I think, like in recession, and if you do it the third time, I think YouTube spams you or whatever. But just do it twice. Bro. Do it twice. You're good, and we'll let it slide." A good question here from Wiggs says, in the weather games, do you guys keep it 2-1 or 2-2 game stacks, or do you do 3-1, 3-2?
Here's the thing: if you think the weather's going to impact it that much, you shouldn't stack that game, right? Because if it reduces the correlation to total points, like why are you playing it? And I understand, right? Like we don't think the weather's going to impact it that much, but if you're playing Buffalo, you're playing Baltimore, you're playing Jalen Hurts, all of those guys, I would potentially 2-1 them, but not because of the weather. Because if I'm playing them, I think the weather's not going to have that great of impact. Because if the weather has an impact, those guys aren't going to meet their price tags. I would only consider in 2-1 those guys because they are so expensive. And there's not like great 3-man stacking options on either team. Buffalo with Gabe Davis hurt, McKenzie kind of fluky, tight end non-existent. You just play him with Diggs, right? Baltimore side, you're not really playing Bateman and Andrews together. You're probably playing 1 or 2, and it's probably Andrews. Hurts, yeah, you could play A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. I get that. Maybe Goddard. So maybe there. But for me, it's a pricing thing more than a weather thing. Because if you think the weather's going to impact it, I wouldn't stack that game.
Yeah. I guess the only thing you could potentially say, I'm not saying this is right, I'm saying, but like maybe if you wanted to do like Lamar Andrews and assume that because the weather's so bad, they just absolutely crush shorthand passing games. But
True.
I don't know if
That's
you're just grasping at straws there. But yeah. Let's see. David says Atlanta 3-1, but will Mariota have the passing volume?
Here's the thing.
Yeah.
Like, for these cheaper stacks, they don't necessarily have to have the volume that a Josh Allen does, right? They can throw 30 pass attempts, score 20 points, and that's enough for their price. So Mariota 3-1. If he's only passing 33 times or whatever, but 80% of those passes go to Pitts in London, yeah, then they can get there. Plus Mariota runs some. So yeah, it can certainly get there. You just got to think about volume based on price, not necessarily overall volume. Right? Unless you think differently.
I was saying, even if you wanted to like super galaxy brain it, isn't Mariota one of the only quarterbacks to throw it to himself for a touchdown? Remember he threw it, the guy tipped it, he caught it and ran it for a touchdown?
It's true. Yeah, so if you just want to go the 1-0 stack with Mariota, hope he catches all of his own touchdowns.
Definitely. What are your thoughts on the tight ends from Houston?
Yeah, I think we'll have to wait till tomorrow morning to see because Brevin Jordan's out once again. Pharaoh Brown is questionable. He played last week. And I was actually looking at this tight end situation earlier. O.J. Howard barely played last week. It was mostly Jordan Akins, who they called up again off the practice squad today, and Pharaoh Brown running the majority of the routes there. I think it's an avoid if Pharaoh Brown is in. We probably won't know till tomorrow morning. If he's out, I could certainly see Jordan Akins being a great punt play.
Yeah, now that you mentioned, I have the tight end model up on the other screen over here. Damn, Mark Andrews is expensive.
I know, dude. I know. That's what I'm saying, man. Mark, I know and understand. Like, you compare him to receivers, he's not that expensive. But compared to other tight ends, like, I mean, come on. Have we succeeded in DFS and fantasy sports and betting buying high, right? And we haven't. And that's really what we're doing here, buying high. Bills offense, which is a great offense. Lamar Jackson, great player. Mark Andrews, great player. But we're literally buying high on all these guys after just massive performances. Let's hope the field chases it. And if they beat us, right? But I think the clearer way is to not play most of those guys this week.
Yeah. So I think what you're saying is don't stack the Baltimore and then just use whatever entry fees you have left. Just bet it on Baltimore team total over. So at least you're going to win one thing.
Yeah, the old hedge. I know Jake, I don't know, he's probably not listening to this because UFC starts in an hour. But a lot of times if he's like 0% exposure, he's like, fuck it, I'm betting that person by knockout. I'm not going to lose all my money today. So if I fade Mackenzie Dern tonight, he's like, I'm going to bet her first round sub. That way I at least cover my DFS entry fees if I'm wrong about her exposure.
Yeah. Back to that dude who wanted a parlay. Yeah, just parlay Devontae Parker plus 400 and then Mackenzie Dern round what's up. It's literally, I bet that every single time she fights. And I'm pretty sure
You got to, dude.
Yeah, you have to.
Definitely ahead.
And I don't know what a two-team cross-sport 4-1 parlay is, or even sportsbooks allow that. But yeah, bet that. So last question here, and then we'll wrap it up unless someone else has any more questions. Strategy-wise, creating DFS lineups with wide receiver tight ends for small field cash games. I look for the best floors for most of my decisions off target, reception volume, and also cheaper undervalued plays. Is there another metric that I'm missing other than injuries? He's been playing DFS for a few years and trying to get better.
For cash games, not really. It's pretty straightforward, right? You just play the guys that are mispriced. And I think you nailed, most of the ways that guys would be mispriced. Where you start to get into other metrics and where you're playing tournaments and small field GPP. So for cash games, I think you're right on MH.
Yep. Dot Bets, thoughts on Penny this week? Low-owned running back with a good matchup.
I get it, man. I get it. Bismo's been spamming Rashad Penny in our staff chat since Monday. So I get it. I'm obviously concerned about the potential workload there with Kenneth Walker and all the fucking games that they play. But he's super cheap, right? So I get it, man. If you want to play Penny, I'm not gonna. I need to revisit. Say maybe I'll play Penny in my own lineup. So I think he's a great high risk play. We'll trust Bismo there.
Yep, no worries. Michael says Elijah Moore or no, you gotta play Elijah Moore. You gotta play Elijah Vesuvius. He's good. He's
Yeah,
exploded.
Elijah Moore, baby. He's the underperforming wide receiver this week. Play Elijah Moore.
Definitely. And then we'll close it out with Ed's question: best, worst, and worst best.
the best worst has to be Trubisky 3-1 stacks, right?
Yeah.
Or like jet stack.
Absolutely.
Worst best. So let me sort by ownership in the model really quickly. Guys who I think are probably overvalued. I mean, to me, and I guess we'll just go back. We'll stick on stacks here. We'll stick on passing games. Baltimore, Buffalo, Philly, if it's weather impacted, and I think Philly for the most part is more weather impacted. Just to reiterate that, I'll say Baltimore is the worst best play.
Yeah, I mean, I think going back to the price as well. I mean, I think Mark Andrews has to be the worst best play, right?
As he goes for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns once again, and we look like that dude in the poker, the screenshot I tweeted out today, right? Like, yeah, maybe it happens again, but I don't know, man. I'm not into paying top tier price for guys who are coming off career games. Just not. That's not what I'm. And when there's any reason in addition to that, like the weather, like Buffalo getting healthy defenders, like their 4-man pass rush, I'm okay with not. I mean, and like I think if you watch the games, right, and you've been following, you would think that Baltimore would be a favorite in this game or pretty close to a pick 'em, right? But then to go see Buffalo minus 3-point favorites on the road here, I think the betting marks are telling you a little bit. It's like, okay, Baltimore's not as good as they've been playing. So that's how I'll finish that off, Moose.
Exactly. Yeah. And then we have to finish off with our last thing, and I'm gonna bring the wide receiver model up here and zoom in a little bit for you all there. Under 10%.
We got lots of options, huh?
And 5,000 and under on DraftKings. Who's getting that touchdown? And I'll say you can't use an underperforming wide receiver.
Oh, come on, dude. All right, so under 10%, under 5K?
Yeah, I have it on screen here. Like, look, like the top 10 people are underperforming wide receivers.
I know, Jesus Christ. I guess I'll go. All right, so I'll go Josh Reynolds. Right, if I can't take DJ Chark, Josh Reynolds was expected to score like 25 fantasy points last week. He had like some crazy amount of air yards. No, I'm on Ross St. Brown. I'll say Josh Reynolds for my pick.
Okay.
Since you're handcuffing me, not allowing me to take an underperforming wide receiver. Who do you got, Moose?
I'm going to say Donovan Peoples-Jones if we're stacking the Cleveland game.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, let's go.
All right.
Yep. Charlie says, how do I get a green, bold colored name? You have to subscribe to us and join our membership program. I always forget to confuse the two. Yeah, join our membership program. That'll get your name green on YouTube, and it'll also give you access to our Discord as well.
Yeah, so click join below the video. It's a small monthly fee. That's for us, honestly, just to keep the trash out, right, of our Discord, right? If you do a small fee, get you connected to the Discord. It's easy for all of us.
Exactly. Yep. So as I resize the picture here, Brian, any last words before I take us out?
Z Killer says AJ Dillon or Herbert this week. Herbert's a safer play. I sneakily like Dillon though, so I'll say Herbert though. I'll say Herbert. He's ranked higher in the model. And David Moose says Long John Silver's or Pizza Hut for tourney victory dinner. Where are we going?
I'll go Pizza Hut. I had some terrible Italian
sure.
food last night, and so I need some good one to back it up. So we're good. I know Pizza's not Italian, but yes.
And I'm going to. Someone's asking how much is it to subscribe? As low as $7 a week. I'll put the link in the chat there for you, Michael. We'd love to have you.
Definitely. Cool. And that'll pretty much wrap it up. If you have any more questions, Twitter. Thank you, Ed, for putting the wrong link.
On HockeyFantasy.cpm.
I know that's if you want to advertise. Don't actually do that. But anyway, yes. So if you have any more questions, Discord. Go ahead and join the Discord. OccupyFantasy.com/Discord. You don't even need an Occupy membership to join. Just join here on YouTube, or you could join and ask us and with a membership, and you get access that way. But if you don't, you can always go ahead and ask on Twitter. Instagram DMs are also open now apparently too. So, and if you're in the TikTok streets, you can. I don't even know if you can DM on TikTok, honestly. But yeah, we're there too. We're in multiple ways to answer your questions. But until next time, Moose and Brian from Occupy Fantasy, have a good night.
Luck.